Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center, which is sponsored by Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island. They offer memory care, independent living, and assisted living and are accepting residents. They also offer day stay and respite programs. To schedule a tour or just learn more about Fieldstone's operation up on Rolling Bay, call 360-594-1010. We are going to be talking about values in action at Woodward Middle School. But I would like to acknowledge before we get started that we are meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people, specifically our neighbors, the Suquamish tribe. We are grateful for their stewardship of the land and waters of the Salish Sea since time immemorial, and we are grateful for their hospitality. Sue Constant, thank you for joining us today and telling us a little bit about this Values in Action program. I know that there are definitely folks in the Senior Center who are participating in your program. So to get us started, maybe you can tell me a little bit about what the program is and how it plays out for kids.
Sure. I would like to do this just using a presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up a PowerPoint slide or a Google Slides that helps just help me talk a little bit about how our values in action came into being at Woodward Middle School. This is my third year at Woodward. I've been a school counselor in Bainbridge, on Bainbridge Island, since I started being a school counselor 12 years ago, and I've worked at various schools. I had the fortunate opportunity in 2022 to go to Singapore on a Fulbright scholarship. And that is where, and really what I was doing there was learning about their character and citizenship education program. I ended up writing a research paper based on my research, and I'm going to read you the abstract so you kind of get an idea of what I was doing there, why I was there, and then how it led to values in action at Woodward Middle School. So the abstract for my research paper is as follows. In 2014, Singapore's Ministry of Education released their comprehensive citizenship and education program called CCE, with a full curriculum update in 2021. The CCE program serves the educational continuum of early primary through secondary age students. As a professional school counselor in the United States, I sought to understand the multifaceted curriculum that was provided to all Singapore schools. School counselors and educational leaders are called to create school counseling programs that are comprehensive in scope, preventative in design, and developmental in nature. What might a national comprehensive program teach us about the development and/or enhancement of character education in our buildings and districts? My opportunity to conduct this research was through a Fulbright Distinguished Awards in Teaching Fellowship. I was guided by 2 research questions and utilized qualitative individual and focus group interviews, observations, and triangulated analysis. When I was there for about 3 months. And while I was there, I had 2 extended observations, one at a primary school and one at a secondary school. And from those experiences, as well as one-day observations at a variety of schools, I, with the help of Woodward staff and educators, came up with the Values in Action program we have at Woodward. So I wanted just to share briefly what those different Values in Action programs looked like at the 2 schools that I observed at, and then how we took that information and developed the one that we have at Woodward. So let's see if it'll work for me. Oh. Okay, so I've read their abstract. One of the areas of research that I really pulled from is a book by Paul Toh. And I love this quote from his book. Science suggests a very different reality. It says that the character strengths that matter so much to young people's success are not innate. They don't appear in us magically as a result of chemistry or good luck or good genes. and they are not simply a choice. They are rooted in the brain, and they are molded in measurable and predictable ways by the environment in which children grow up. This means the rest of us, society as a whole, can do an enormous amount to influence their development in children. The more we focus on character, education, and values, the more they grow. And that's really kind of the whole idea behind what we're doing at Woodward. I had 2 research questions. How does Singapore's character and citizenship education program prioritize character and values education? So how do they make it a priority in that country? And then how might Singapore's character and citizenship education initiative inform the character and values education initiatives in my school, in my district, and school counseling community? So those are sort of my 2 leading research questions as I went in. The primary school I was at was called Princess Elizabeth Primary School. It was an amazing school. I learned so much from the people there, and they really welcomed me with open arms. I mean, that's one thing I really learned from the Singaporeans. They know how to do hospitality. They were just so hospitable. It was pretty amazing. So ages 7 through 12. And their values in action program, they were a STEM school. So this is kind of what their sort of program values in action looked like. It's called the inclusive design process. They called it the love experience. And what they did is they first kind of learned about a population. So kind of empathy, defined what the population is. Then they really thought about, okay, what can we do to maybe create something to help that community in some way. And then they made it. Again, they were STEM, so they were all about creating things. And then they shared it with that population. So that's kind of how their values and action looked like. And this is how they divided it up. Second grade focused on the aging population, senior citizens in the community. Third grade was people with hearing loss. Fourth grade was people with vision loss. Fifth grade was people with dyslexia, and sixth grade was people with autism. So every single grade had a focus using that design process. And the one I'll just highlight was the one people with autism. So what they did is they first learned about that population, and I got a chance to see, it was still kind of during COVID when I was there. It was right after the Omicron kind of uptick. So it was online, but they had a sister school, which is the school with people with autism, and that was their sister school. So there was a really amazing educator that was just talking to the kids about people with autism, and so that was kind of the first frame. But then what they did is they imagined, okay, so we have the sister school, we have really young kids who are learning social skills. And so what they did is they created an ebook on life skills. That's what they did. And then they went and they shared this thing that they created with the younger students at this school. So that's kind of how they did their values in action for people with autism. And then again, every grade had a different focus. So I was so inspired by kind of what they were doing. And this really took, it was over like a couple different months. It wasn't like it was 1 week. It was over a couple different months that they had this focus. So that's what I saw at Princess Elizabeth. And then this goes.
Can I just ask a question about so it was STEM, so it was science, technology, math, that kind of thing.
Right.
But the concept that they were using was love.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, to me, those 2 words would probably not naturally fit together, but they did in this execution of the curriculum, you're saying.
Yes, for sure. I'm forgetting they had a set of values. I'm forgetting what their particular ones were. Every single school in Singapore has their own set of values. But I think they were kind of combining what their values are with this values in action, but also create the idea of creating something once they've learned more about the population that they were focusing on. And I can't recall what some of the other projects were for the different grades because I was focusing on this sixth grade project, but they were super excited. And part of what they had to do is work together because there was a team of people creating these ebooks. So there was that whole kind of group experience, which brought its own set of challenges. So this talks a little bit about the different stages. That first one is framing, gaining insights to what they might need, what they might want, developing a sense of empathy towards the user, and then imagining being in their environment, stepping into their shoes, to gain a deeper understanding of their situations and creating some ideas, and then making, including a prototype and designing. And actually the first round of ebooks that they did, the teachers came back to them from the Eden School and said, they're wonderful, but you kind of missed the mark, so they had to kind of go back and redesign based on the needs of these younger students. And then they shared it. So, and they do a lot of like self-reflection there. So that the following year they would, take insights, how can we make this whole process better, and then apply that to the following year. So, but that's kind of what their program looked like. And I was like, wow, I love how it's kind of a deep dive. They really go into it pretty deeply, not just do one lesson and, be done with it. So, so that's what I saw at the primary school. And then I was at St. Teresa's Secondary School, which was an all-girls school, and was there for a couple weeks. This was their different focuses because they also had a values in action deep dive. So S1, that's like 8th graders, our age. So it was caring for our earth. 9th graders, aging in the elderly. 10th graders were people with visual impairments. And then 4th grader or juniors was focused on career guidance, kind of that last year. So that they had something similar to the primary school. And then, so for example, with their senior citizens, and they also have, the baby boomers, a pretty big senior citizen population in Singapore. So it was interesting that both schools had a focus on that. So the context of what their values in action program was who? The elderly. So kind of learning more about senior citizens in Singapore, what their experience was, let's see. Oh, so well, I happened to be there when they were doing this, and this was during kind of this intensive week where they were doing a lot of work on their values in action. And one thing they did is they had this outside community come in, and everyone wore a virtual headset. And the virtual headset, it puts you into a grocery store, and how it worked is it made you have a mobility disability. So just trying to pick something up with this virtual headset, trying to get to the bus, it was really, really difficult. And I'm not sure the science behind this virtual headset, but I know that I dropped a packet of tea and I could not pick it up for the life of me. And then I was running for the bus and I missed it. So it was the whole idea of, trying that whole empathy piece, trying to imagine, you're an older person, you have some mobility challenges. What might that feel like, right? So that built in that whole idea of empathy. It was such an amazing experience. I mean, something like that here would be really hard to pull off. They bring in a lot of outside vendors. That's one thing I noticed about Singapore. And so this was an outside vendor. And I actually looked it up last year to see if we could do something like that. And I couldn't find anything. So that was their what. And then their reflection was guiding questions and inquiring tasks are incorporated to help students reflect more deeply on their experience. And then the action piece. So again, learning about a population, imagining some of the challenges, imagining some of the wonderful aspects of that time of life. And then what might we do as high school students to reach out to people in our community, our aging population. So that was their action. And then again, they do a lot of self-reflection about how did this go? What did we learn? Similar to both the primary school and also what we did at Woodward. So these were two different programs that were doing these multi-month value in action deep dives, which inspired what we did at Woodward. The action piece really, it was then those students coming up with what they wanted to do. It wasn't, the teacher saying, well, this is what we're going to do for senior citizens in our community. They really looked to them about what they wanted to do for next steps.
Who was set? We're going to
Yeah,
do something that focuses on the elderly. Now let's imagine as a group what
yeah,
we might do. That's
right,
so there's a
right.
lot of buy-in by the kids too.
Yeah. There was a couple other kind of cool focuses that they had at both schools. One was during COVID. A lot of the people that do the construction in Singapore are people that are not from Singapore. So they're living in a lot of people, I think, from the Philippines and Indonesia, the construction workers, and they live in dorms. And during COVID, I guess there was just COVID throughout the dorms. And it was pretty bad. And so one thing they did is they created care packages for all the people that are really building Singapore. That was a really cool idea. I know for the aging population, or kind of the focus on senior citizen at the primary school, there's dengue fever, which is pretty bad. It's caused by mosquitoes. And so these kids created a pamphlet, and they went door to door, and they have something called housing resource board. It's not it's a housing type situation in Singapore, but a lot of people live in these different housing establishments, and they went door to door talking to people, and I'm like, about dengue fever and giving out pamphlets, so they were educated about it. And mostly they focused on the elderly, just because they don't get out as much in their minds. And I was like, well, did you have parents that were with you as you went door to door? And they were like, and these are 11-year-olds, and they're like, no, we were just by ourselves. It's very safe there. So they felt, no, but that was kind of what their values in action. They're like, we need to inform some of our elderly people who maybe don't know about dengue fever, about how to prevent it, what are the signs and things like that. So that was their values in action program. So
Okay.
So with this, I mean, there were so many things I learned from my colleagues in Singapore, but with this, the next question was, how might Singapore's CCE inform character education sorry, let me go back one. Whoops. Oh my goodness, I'm going the wrong way.
Onward we go. Yeah.
Yeah. How might Singapore's CCE inform character education in my building, district, and school counseling community? So how do I take this information and utilize it in my current job? So that was next steps. And more specifically, how might we incorporate values in action at Woodward Middle School? So, I mean, I think the most important thing to realize is that there was a staff there willing to embrace this whole idea. And a group of people that really helped me get our first year off the ground, which is last year. The first thing we did is we had some values, but they were kind of, who knows when they were created, and there wasn't a huge focus on them. So last year, a year from last August, at our staff retreat, we kind of re-envisioned, okay, what are our values? And we came up with connection, integrity, and compassion, and created banners and put them all over our building. So these are the two banners that we created. And then we came up with, okay, based on what I learned in Singapore, let's do something similar. Let's do a deep dive that really focuses on our values. So I love this quote: tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. So our values in action plan really was focused on that second and third sentence. It's a proactive approach to value development. This is a kind of a little graph that tries to attempt what we were doing. So the compassion, connection, and reflective values in action journey, exploring compassion and connection during the month of April. So first of all, figuring out who our focus is, learn and empathize about a group of people, what experience, action, different lessons, collaboration with community groups, learning journeys, which might be like a field trip or having people come to us, and then really the reflection piece, which is so key. What are the big takeaways, and then developing feedback for future deep dives. So that's kind of what it looks like. Last year, as you all know, our focus was senior citizens in our Bainbridge community and beyond. And the context and the frame of that was involved developing a deeper understanding of the aging, including the benefits, the challenges, and attempting to step into the shoes of senior citizens in our community. The goal is to develop a sense of compassion and gain insights into what they need, what they want, how they behave, feel, and think, and really leaving assumptions at the door. So that was what we did. We did it through lessons. We have something called,
You did
oh
this
yeah,
across both grades?
yes. So that was for 7th and 8th grade. So Woodward 7th and 8th graders, so middle school. And on Mondays, we have something called Seminar, which is our social emotional platform. It's every Monday. And there's all sorts of lessons throughout the year. But for the month of April, our seminar lessons were based on our deep dive. And then every teacher, every department also did their own lesson on our focus, senior citizens in our community and in our world and in our nation. Our collaboration with our community groups was the Senior Center. What's the name of the volunteer group?
IBC.
Yeah.
Caregivers,
Yes,
IVC.
yes, that group, and then Bainbridge Senior Living. So that's who we kind of was our collaboration with community groups. The guest speakers were about 50 people that came in on that Monday for our tea, which was an amazing, I think that was definitely the highlight, as well as, I think my personal highlight was the concert with the jazz band and the senior center choir and the Woodward choir. I thought that was just wonderful. So that was our last year's focus, and again, it's April, and then we gather a lot of data. We did a pre and post test, and one of the questions that for me was so beneficial, the question was, do you feel like our values deep dive in April helped you gain a greater understanding of the values of compassion and connection? And 80% of our students said yes. So that's the kind of perception data that is so helpful to determine if we're headed in the right direction.
Right.
So again, that pre and post perception data is super helpful. And just also perception data from our teachers as well. Because it takes a lot of energy to, design a whole nother, take a day and design a lesson based on the focus of the year. But everyone did it, people really embraced it. So that was our focus for last year. And again, we have students for 2 years. So the idea is that we flip every year, so people aren't getting the same value deep dive focus every year. So last year was senior citizens in our community. This year, this is just a little bit about compassion, which is one of our values. Oh, and again, hear more about seeing someone in need, caring about their feelings, imagining feelings they may experience, and doing something to show you care, connecting. That was, again, last year. This year, our focus is refugees and asylum seekers in our community, state, and nation. So again, the idea is to do refugees 1 year, then next year go back to senior citizens in our community. And kind of the benefit of that is that we will have the curriculum developed, we'll have sort of the ideas developed, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel every year. And I'm just starting to kind of pull this one together for April. It takes a while, and a lot of it is connecting with different community groups. And so anyone who watches this, if you have an idea for me about this focus, refugees and asylum seekers in our community, my email will be on the very last slide, and definitely email me. So our context and frame for this year is to introduce students to the concept of refugees and asylum seekers and their stories, fostering empathy and connection while emphasizing the value of compassion. And again, just like last year, leave our assumptions and experiences behind when making observations. and develop a cross-cultural reciprocal connection with students their age. If we can pull that off, I have some ideas, who've had a different life experience as well as adults in the community. So that's kind of what we're shooting for. And again, the same idea as last year, using the seminar lessons and classroom lessons, collaboration with community groups, and learning about people who have a different life experience, caring about their feelings, and doing something to show you care. So how that's going to look, I'm not sure yet, but that is what we're going to do this year. And then circle back
and wonderful.
Yeah. So that, and then that's just any questions. Kind of went through it pretty quickly. Hi, Colleen. I see Colleen's here.
What's deep dive mean?
It's like the idea of, here, I'll stop the share. The idea is like it's kind of like the idea of a deep dive into our values. So instead of doing like one lesson on compassion, really focusing on those values, utilizing and learning about a population in our community. So
over a period of time.
Yeah. So for us, it's over about a 5-week period. And there's seminar lessons. Every different department has a lesson. So kids are getting many different lessons from a lot of different angles. You may have remembered last year. Oh yeah, that was so great.
I remember this.
That was the highlight. That was so amazing.
It was great.
Yeah, and also we did bingo last year. So bingo is continuing because everyone loved it so much.
Even though you're not doing elders this year, you're going to have our elders anyway, right?
Yes, exactly. We got to just keep doing bingo. We were thinking it'd be great to do it like 3 times, throughout the year. Just continue to do that. But then again, with that focus next year, we'll start reaching out to you guys.
Oh, we'll be there. I'll be there. Colleen will be there. I know she will come.
Yeah, I will be definitely.
Both she and I, we were sort of. She was on the table next to me, and I was sort of. She was doing better than I was.
So I'm wondering if was any kind of follow-up after the April last year with the study about the senior, or with the focus being on the seniors. Is there any kind of end result, so to speak, of what you learned, what the kids learned, what you as the educators learned about that focus?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the perception data that, because the idea is like, how do you grow these values, right? And really how you grow values is you focus on them and you approach them from many different angles. So I think for me, the one perception data point that made me realize that we are on the right track was the answer to that one question. Do you feel like this deep dive has increased your understanding and increased the values of connection and compassion? And 80% of the kids in 7th and 8th grade were like, yes. I mean, it was a pretty simple question, right? Because they're not going to fill. But so to me, that just is like, okay, it feels like we're on the right track. And I think with senior citizens in our community, so many of them will have contact, not only grandparents, but just in the community, whether they're working in the community with our senior citizen population. So I think it just increased an awareness about what our senior citizens have to teach us. But really, and I think also with that perception data, I also reached out to our educators, our teachers, and they had some suggestions about how to streamline it or maybe what to do differently the following year. But for the most part, there was like just so much enthusiasm for what we did. And it's hard for them because they have so much they feel like they have to do curriculum wise by the end of the year. But I think they also realize that this is some of the most important work that we're going to do with our students, So, and you can approach all these different populations from a variety of different ways. Like if you may have remembered last year, our math teachers did that survey where they asked people a whole bunch of questions, but then they used that to analyze data, and they used it as a teaching point about math, which I think we can do again, this year with this focus, our focus this year. I know for sure, like geography, we can definitely do as far as refugees and asylum seekers. We'll be able to do some geography work. I mean, there's a lot we can do with both focuses, both senior citizens and refugees. So
when you were talking about the STEM school, I think of that as being, okay, they did some engineering of the ebooks as
right.
part of, and so they were doing some things that were not directly related to the topic, but the material they were working with was values related.
For
And
sure. And
if you're working with the elders, as you did last year and will again next year, as well as this year. Anyway, the thing is, I don't know what the percentage of the children that we were working that are at Woodward have grandparents around, I mean, close by, so they see them all the time, kind of thing, or at least part of the time. And what this does is it gives people an opportunity to be a grandparent and and have grandparents right sitting there next to them with a bingo game. And it's I think it's wonderful. Anyway.
Not yet. Not everyone has grandparents around, I mean, it feels like there's a lot of grandparents that live in a different state, and maybe they don't see them very often. So, yeah.
And
It does work both ways. It does work both ways.
Is the upcoming bingo just a fun thing, or is it actually part of last year? I mean, what are you looking at bingo this time for?
I think it is a continuation of last year. I mean, it's totally fun and it brings joy to our building, and it's just a fun activity that's just good all around. But it's also bringing, these amazing people that have had so much life lessons to share with us, just to have that connection. I think that is such a benefit. And like Reed said, it's both ways. It's great for the people in the community that come in, and it's great for the kids as well. So just to have that connection to our community, and continuing to do that, even if it isn't our focus this year, is it just lightens the mood. Not that there's a heavy mood at Woodward, but it's just something to look forward to, and
during lunch.
Yeah.
So no curriculum challenge there.
Exactly. And we can get through quite a few games, it's like there's many prizes to be had during that time frame. So yeah, I think our district is always looking for ways to connect to our community members. I think it just makes it, the people on this island have had so many amazing life experiences to share. And even if it's just, having fun side by side, it's still, I think, so beneficial. So
sure, some of those speakers were amazing.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So
I'm sure you'll get some wonderful speakers this year.
Yes, I think that there's so much wonderful curriculum out there, but it's like trying to figure out, do we want to try to do something similar where we find maybe 20 speakers to go into the seminar classrooms? And if so, how do we find them? So that was my shout out to this group. If they have an idea about maybe how to find people in our community that are asylum seekers and refugees. And so often people who are migrating here are leaving a really difficult situation in their home, even though they're, maybe their title is migrant, they're still leaving a very hard situation in their home country. I mean, that's so many people out there. So how do we find maybe people who would be willing to come in and talk to our students, similar to what we did last year, that idea of a seminar tea. So that's our next step, is to kind of figure out what that might look like. So
it would seem to me that one place too that would be St. Cecilia, certainly. And I
Oh.
think that they've been working on asylum work.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so you might talk with whoever would be up there. I guess I would almost talk with Susan Kilbane, who is the principal there at the school, and
Okay.
see what she might have in mind there. She
Okay.
would certainly understand what you're talking about. And
Well, yeah, I'll repeat your email too in case somebody is watching. SCONSTAN@BISD303.org.
Yes. Great.
Thank you very much, Sue, for taking the time to explain this with us. Very fascinating. Good work. So glad you were able to have the
we're gonna do it again.
the scholarship to learn this and then bring it back. I think, citizenship has long been part of the concept of American schooling, but when we are so burdened or whatever, focused on some specific scores, we kind of lose some of that core original focus. And so I think bringing back connection, integrity, and compassion to the schools is a wonderful thing. Thank you for your work.
Yeah,
Amen.
thank you. And
Amen.
thank you all for partnering with us last year and this year too.